Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Appreciate everybody being here. We have a number of items on the agenda tonight. A few of them, I'm going to ask for staff to make sure I get this right. Items 1 and 2 we'll hear tonight. Items 3, 4, 5, and 6 have either been continued or withdrawn. So 3 different items. And with that, we'll go ahead and start with a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Appreciate, I believe it's Russell that's going to, I'm sorry, it's not. Do
you want me to pray?
It's Jamin that's going to do the pledge.
I'm doing the pledge, yes, sorry.
After, thank you, Shannon. Pray for us.
Yeah. Our dear kind Father in heaven, we're very grateful for this opportunity to gather as a community, and we pray that Thou will bless us with the intellect and generosity that we need to come to the best possible conclusions for these issues in our community. And we pray that everyone will feel heard, and we pray that we can have unity in our city, and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll go ahead and do a roll call. Maria, do you mind starting?
Not at all. Maria Winden, no conflicts.
Russell Phillips, no conflicts.
Andrew Howard, no conflicts.
Dave Anderson, no conflicts.
Jamin Rowan, no conflicts.
Robert Knudsen, no conflict.
Shannon Ellsworth, no conflicts.
Thank you. Item number 1 tonight, this is a public hearing. Miller General Contractors has requested project plan approval for a 108-unit apartment complex located at 61 West, 400 South. And with that, we'll turn it over to staff for a presentation.
The applicant is requesting for a project plan approval for a 108-unit apartment building located at 61 West, 400 South in the ITOD zone, in the downtown neighborhood. This project plan includes 1 apartment building sitting above an underground parking garage. There will be 28 studio apartments, 39 one-bedroom, and 42 two-bedroom units. This just shows you a site plan of the building. The building provides interior amenities such as an exercise room, a clubhouse, common rooms, and leasing office. The ground level includes outdoor amenities such as fire pits, outdoor seating areas, outdoor kitchens, and a playground and landscaping around the building. The ground floor units do have access to their units off the sidewalk as a secondary entrance off of 100 West and 400 South, but all units will be able to be accessed off 1st West and 400 South through primary entrances that have stairways and elevators. Parking is provided with 17 surface stalls and 134 stalls underground, totaling 147 parking stalls, which meets the minimum requirements of 146. This does include the ADA parking stalls. There are also bicycle lockers provided in the underground parking structure for the people living at the property. The parking garage can be accessed off of 100 West, and the surface lot will be accessed off of 400 South. This view shows the north elevation off 400 South. Maximum height of the building is 50 feet, which is less than the maximum of 100 feet, which would be allowed within the ITOD zone. This project plan meets the setback requirements within this zone. It's just showing the west elevation of the project. The project plan meets all the requirements within the ITOD zone and is allowed by right within this zone. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve this project plan for a 108 unit apartment building located at 61 West, 400 South. Are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions of staff?
A couple of things that staff really likes about the project or appreciates about the project is, first of all, the level of parking being under the building, not at ground level, but actually underground. I think the other projects we've had built around the city have built at ground level and then built the units on a podium above that. If we can go back to the elevation of the next one. The other thing that has been refreshing on this one is that you know from other projects that you've reviewed how on some projects it's been a debate to get doors on the street. And people have only done the absolute minimum required by the code or have asked to do less than that. This developer read the ordinances and the codes before they started designing the project, and they've been much more cooperative about getting doors at street level. Those are all units, which we really appreciate. We want that active ability for an active street interface with the building.
I have a question. The staff report said just a little bit about the design review committee's concerns or hesitations about the project. Is there any more that you'd be willing to say about their concerns about materials, colors, so forth, and what any update from the developer about how they're meeting those concerns?
Of course. So we are meeting with the design review committee tomorrow with the applicant to go over updated forms that they've sent us. But the applicant is here also tonight, so if you have questions, you can ask them as well.
Sure.
I had a question about the parking. You said that this does meet the parking requirements, but it seems a little low to me. 147 stalls is all that's required for an apartment complex of 108 units.
So the parking is calculated based on whether it's a one-bedroom unit or two-bedroom unit. Once that calculation is made, in the ITOD zone, the downtown zones, you have a right to a 25% break in that parking ratio because you're in downtown or the ITOD zone. So that's what they've asked for. They've taken advantage of that 25% break, but they haven't asked to go below that. You remember that if you have a parking management plan, transportation management plan, you can go even below the 75%. But you have to show the planning commission that you're doing some things that would warrant that further reduction. They're not asking for any further reduction.
And you don't count the 25 studio apartments?
So they count as a one-bedroom.
Okay.
Studio and a one-bedroom is a one-bedroom.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Is there anyone here tonight representing the applicant?
Architect, 3520 North University Avenue in Provo. I need to say it again, you got it? The architect on the project. There was a couple of items that the design review committee asked us to take a look at in our meeting with them. One of them was the color palette. The original color palette was much lighter brick color and some lighter other material colors. We took that advice and toned down the brick down to a darker brownish color, which relates to some of the surrounding buildings. And we think that was fine with us. We think that's an improvement. They talked about the massing of the building to get some more volume of the roofs. And we had a lot more jogs in the roof surface in the original proposal. And we've toned that down and tried to make it a little more even along the top of the roof, not so many, just in some important areas we jogged the roofs up. The other thing was the design review committee talked about having some privacy at the ground floor entries. It's our feeling, we didn't do that, and it's our feeling that the planning in Provo City really likes this urban feel where the doors into the units can be accessed from the sidewalk and the street. And we just don't see the point in covering that up, putting walls and fences to gain privacy in front of the doors that we're doing spending a lot of money to expose and have it more of an urban feel with people coming in and out of the units on the street level. So that's one thing we did not do.
Can you describe further, maybe, so you said they suggested walls or fences?
They wanted privacy. They wanted some privacy concerns around those doors on the ground level.
So you have a sidewalk.
And we're
Or would
back
there
6
be
feet, so there's not a lot of room to do too much, so.
Building 6 feet from the edge of the sidewalk, you've got porch, stairs.
And
Where would you put?
I don't know where you'd put it. There's just not a lot of space
Staff
to
have any
do it.
insight maybe on what?
And it would cover up the urban feel, the doors coming off of the street. So we did not do that.
But there are steps there. You go from the sidewalk up.
Depending on the grade as it's coming along the street, there'll probably be some porches would be pretty well level with the ground, maybe one step. And as you get down where the ground slopes to the south, there might be 2 or 3 steps. So we'll adjust that to follow the grade of the sidewalk. Any other questions I could answer?
What was your original color scheme?
It was more of a light golden colored brick, a really light color. And we think this is really good too. So we're happy with this. Okay, yeah, you can maybe see the lighter color on that. There's a couple of buildings adjacent to it that have the darker color, so we went with that.
Anything else for Mr. Harris?
Yeah, so you were permitted 100 feet in height, but you only went to 50. Was that because of parking constraints, or?
Yeah, it's, the number of units is based on bedrooms pretty much, or apartments, and how many, underground parking is really expensive. And, the project has the pencil, and we think we've hit the right size of building and the right number of parking below to make it work. And one of my favorite things about this type of project is you see very few cars, which to me is a huge advantage for the people of Provo. We got a few surface cars on the northeast corner. There can't be very many there, but the bulk of them are hidden, and you're just not viewed. Where there's maybe 10 or so along that northeast corner, just for visitors and mail and things like that.
And you foresee this appealing to young single professionals primarily?
I think this would be, in this part of town, we see this part of Provo as one of the up-and-coming, unused, really underutilized parts of town. And I think with the hub being so close, there'll be a lot of young professionals living in this apartment, walking a couple of blocks to the transit facility and going wherever they're going to go. And we just see that happening in a lot of these apartments. Yeah, we have studios, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms. And in our experience lately, the 1 bedrooms have become one of the hottest parts of the real estate market. So we got a significant number of those.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Question. A while back, I'm not sure the time frame, this body approved an application for the Harmon Building renovation just to the south of this proposed project. And they said that the property just to the west of them, they're located on the corner of 400 South and, yeah, 400 South and 100 West. No, sorry, University Avenue and 400 South. They said that the property just to the west of them was owned by Provo City Housing, and they had been given permission to have any overflow parking take place on that property. if you have any overflow parking, would you be using that property just to the south of this property?
We don't have any plans to do that. No, that's not been part of our proposal.
Okay, so the other property would still be able to use that for parking?
I assume it's not, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I'm not sure what you mean. So if you look at the map, this is the building you reviewed and approved, and that's now renovated and it's been in use. There was discussion of them using this for any overflow until it developed. And the developer does have this under contract from the Housing Authority. That's who's selling this property to the developer. This is now operating long enough now that we know how the parking and traffic should work on that, and they know that this is going forward.
Okay.
I have a question. Sorry, are you done? Okay. Are you selling these units individually, or will you lease them under your organization?
I'll say it again.
Are you selling the units individually?
No, they're apartments.
Okay,
It will not be condos, no.
okay.
Again, anything else from Mr. Harris?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay close, Ken. Ken, just stay close, will you, in case they have any other questions as this goes on? Yes, please. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Do we have the neighborhood chair with us tonight? Do we have a neighborhood chair that would like to? Is there anybody here from the public that would like to speak to this?
Becky Bogdan, Lakewood Neighborhood Chair. Just from seeing this just barely, what my concerns would be, this is south of 3rd. This is where a lot of the crime is. And you've got walk-in apartments on that first level with no security. And then the parking also gets me because we do have a lack of married student housing. So studio apartments, one-bedroom apartments, are we thinking that they won't be filled with couples with 2 cars? So those are just my only comments. It's a beautiful building, but we do have some challenges to conquer, and I just don't think that those 2 factors work. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to speak to this item? Okay, if not, we'll close the public hearing. Gentlemen, sir.
My name is Paul DeBry. I'm a landowner, have an apartment building close to that. I welcome them, look forward to having more traffic in that area and have it developed and look nice in the area. I've known the developer for years and think highly of him and happy to have somebody of his caliber bringing something to that area.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Planning commissioners, do you have any additional questions? Applicant, we really have a lot maybe that you might want to clarify, but any discussion on the item? I guess maybe I have just a couple of questions for staff. The ITOD zone, if you have at your fingertips a zoning map, or maybe could you just describe approximately what part of this area is already zoned?
Could you bring up the GIS map, please? We should have the GIS map to be able to come up really quickly, so we'll just put up the zoning layer.
Okay. And relative to that, property is currently zoned.
Yes.
So we're just talking about approving a project plan, and staff has found the plan to be consistent with the city's requirements.
Yes, so you are the approving authority. This is not a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I assume we're talking about several blocks in the area that
Yes.
are already zoned.
So the purple is the ITOD zone.
Okay.
We're right there. There's Startup Crossing, the one that's right on 6th South and Freedom Boulevard. We're right there. First West is envisioned to be a pedestrian corridor in the downtown master plan. So this building will be the first step towards trying to achieve that. You're soon going to be seeing a plan for this entire block, so they'll be able to also help achieve that first steps towards a pedestrian corridor.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll just say that, I love seeing this zone filled out in the way that we've envisioned. Understand the concerns about safety. You address safety by getting eyes on the street, by getting more people in the neighborhood, and so I think that as places like this continue to come in and not turn their backs on the street, but rather face the street through doors, windows, that's how you address safety far better than policing or anything else like that. So I'm really excited about this plan and the future plans it sounds like that we'll be seeing. I'm ready to make a motion unless anyone else has something to say. Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we approve Miller General Contractor's request for the project plan of a 108-unit apartment building located generally at 61 West, 400 South in the ITOD zone. That's in the downtown neighborhood. And include in that recommendation the staff recommendations and conditions. There are 3 of them. All items in the CRC report are met and satisfied. 2, that the plans are in conformance with the downtown design standards. And 3, the street design for 100 West from the downtown master plan is addressed and met. And then, of course, I guess it'd be subject to the design review committee's approval. It sounds like they'll be meeting soon as well.
I'll second that motion.
That was Commissioner Ronan and Commissioner Ellsworth. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay, if not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That was unanimous. Thank you. Just a quick maybe discussion on the project, some of the discussion that we had. And I may be the only one that feels this way. I really appreciate where we've gone, and going back years and years, to compel people, encourage. I think it's more like compel, to do what Commissioner Ronan said, get doors and therefore eyes on the street, require balconies and different things like that. There are some things that kind of concern me, though, just relative to a couple of projects that are getting finished up, in terms of that interface between the street, sidewalk, and building. And I think they might be anomalies, but if not, I'd love to maybe spend some time in a future work session just kind of talking about that relationship as you go from the sidewalk to the entrances to these units. For example, the building that is just getting occupied on the corner of 3rd South and University Avenue on the northeast side, where the stairs are right there, to the extent even that the required landing for the stairs is on the sidewalk. That versus maybe a little bit of space there that somebody might actually spend some time in to have a little bit better just interface with that public space. And I don't know if that's unique. I don't know if that's...
That had to be kind of adjusted during construction because of the BRT project and some utilities that got adjusted during construction. That's not exactly how it was designed.
Okay.
But we understand exactly what you're saying and think we need to watch that more carefully in the future.
And I don't know where the CRC necessarily is coming from with what they suggested. I don't see any value in screening things off, but I have seen some great examples where even in a really small space, there's almost a porch kind of a thing there. And anyway, that's my...
So there's public space, and then there's semi-private space, and then there's private space, is what you're saying.
It's almost the balcony at ground level.
I mean, you have it
can
right
make that
across the
comparison.
street here at that project with those apartments running down, is it 3rd West? But this doesn't have that kind of infrastructure even. It's just kind of steps and then...
Okay. Off agenda, I apologize for that. Let's get back on track here. The West Side plan. I know this has been talked about quite a bit. Again, this is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and let staff start.
Since this is the second time you're hearing this, I'll just go ahead and highlight those changes that took place in the map since the last time you saw this, based on the public input that was given. Starting from east to west, the committee met again and thought this commercial area should be expanded from 24 acres to 30, and that this commercial node should be added. There was quite a bit of discussion in the committee meeting about the cost of all the housing through this area, the ongoing cost of the city, and the city makes up that deficit by retail tax base. So having commercial here and having the commercial nodes where they are is an attempt to try to offset the financial deficit that residential housing causes for the city. Both in the last meeting and in an email that you received, the neighborhood chair of Lakewood asked that that commercial node not be there, primarily because the elementary school may someday go up in this area. The school district owns property right now, but it's right next to Footprinter Park. Footprinter Park was bought with federal dollars for Land and Conservation Fund, which means you can't just sell off a piece of it to go to a school. You have to go through a federal approval process to now impact land that was bought with land and water conservation funds. So it's not an easy process, and so that elementary school may not actually go there because that property may not come out of the conservation area. But that's the school district's desire, is to have it where they already own property at Footprinter Park. I believe that the email you got from the neighborhood chair also asked that since that has gone to commercial, that now this not be commercial. I'm sure she's here tonight. I'm sure she'll talk more about that. These LDR areas were increased in size. Do you remember Matt Carter being here in the last meeting and asking for justifying more density along the continuation of Geneva Road someday? So those were enlarged. That airport compatible commercial zone was extended there. That was changed to RA, residential agriculture, 20,000 square foot lots. I think that's the extent of the changes that we made. If any of the committee members can see something I forgot, please don't hesitate to point it out. That's all I have.
Any questions for staff? Okay.
So I do have one question. And one of your comments, Bill, connects to the conversation we had in our pre-meeting, which was about offsetting costs. I mean, to what degree is it quantifiable? To what degree those commercial areas might offset some of those costs, or was it a kind of a nice gesture type of thing, a general gesture?
I think it was more a general gesture because we didn't do any kind of actual financial analysis on that. I think the committee understands the implications of residential growth and is trying to offset that. But my experience would be that, and we lost our redevelopment director, but I would have asked him if he thought this would offset. I don't think it would. I think we would still be in a deficit situation with that amount of residential. That would be my guess. No, I meant Dave. But Dixon, if you have any idea of that, please. I was looking for Dave Walter, sorry.
You say the last 2 minutes of what you're saying.
So, you want me to clarify, or do you? Please do. So Jamin was asking, to what extent is it likely that these commercial nodes would really offset the financial deficit cities create with housing like this?
That's a great question to be asking 150 years after Provo was built. I mean, so we have, the die has been cast in Provo for single-family residential for a lot of years, and to say now that we don't want to do any more residential because it'll cost more money, I mean, that position could certainly be taken, and it's a valid one, but at the same time, the commercial here, the commercial nodes that we do have, is planning on at some level a certain amount of residential housetops. And I don't think they care if they're, and I think to Commissioner, to your point, whether they're stacked or spread out, they probably don't care. They're looking for probably another 2,500 rooftops here. And there certainly is a cost, but that cost is being borne in Grandview. It's being borne in the tree streets. I mean, all those people contribute to the drain on the utilities and the infrastructure of our community for police and fire. And so, again, it's certainly a wonderful discussion and academic debate over whether that should be single-family residential or stacked, but as far as supporting the commercial that we have in our community that does then pay for some of those goods and services that we need. So, again, I would hope that, again, the commercial that we have here is to support our community. I think we've had other debates or conversations about how much commercial we should have. Most of the trends in our citywide is to actually reduce the commercial. And I mean, if you look what happened on South State Street, most of that is now going to be residential, and that's great. It has its own costs, and benefits to it. This is actually creating some additional commercial opportunity that otherwise wouldn't exist. And these will be borne out by the market. If 15, 20 years from now nothing's happened there, then maybe they're more ripe for higher densities or even single family. I mean, we could, and we said this in a neighborhood meeting last Wednesday night, we could zone the entire west side commercial, but it doesn't mean it will be out as commercial. I mean, the market will kind of dictate a lot of that, but by having some opportunities, at least we have that opportunity to do so. And it's a general plan, so a lot of it remains to be seen. I mean, for that matter, any farmer here can keep doing his thing if he wants to. No one's making them sell, him or her sell, and again, the market will dictate that, whether it's market for housing or market for commercial. But to say that we shouldn't go residential on these because of the cost that will be borne to the city overall, I think that cat was let out of the bag a long time ago with just any of the suburban densities that we have elsewhere in the city.
But the cat was let out of the bag a long time ago. The die was cast a long time ago. I mean, what do you mean by that? That therefore we have...
Provo's a suburban community. And this is more of the same.
Okay. I mean, I guess we fundamentally disagree about the ability that we have as a city to make the smartest decision we can.
Don't get me wrong. This can be high-density residential, same number of housetops, but just on smaller footprints and preserve. That's okay too.
Right. Well, I mean, the smaller footprints would suggest lower maintenance cost to the city, and that's fundamentally what the question is about. Is it costs a certain amount of money to build out part of our city this way to the city, to all the residents.
Yeah.
And the question was, to what degree really does the commercial, through its tax, sales tax revenue, offset that? And just to answer that question by saying, well, we have no control over that because the die was cast 150 years ago, seems to me just irresponsible. But maybe you didn't intend to say that. That's just the message that I feel like you're sending.
Yeah. And again, I also said that if you do want to go higher density residential, I'm probably good either way on it. As far as offsetting the residential expenses by the commercial that's being built, the commercial will bring in a certain amount of revenue, but it will also have its costs to it, increased traffic. But again, by bringing some commercial closer to whatever kind of residential you have, it will have at least the opportunity, or starting to at least having some residential or commercial closer to the residential, so you don't have to drive as far. You have a chance of walking or riding your bike to it, again, regardless of the density. Mm-hmm. Police and fire, again, whether it's spread out or it's stacked, I mean, again, there's going to be opportunity costs on either side of that. But I guess what I'm saying is that the die is cast for that model. It's being replicated all over the country. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. This is, again, opportunity cost with it, but it seems that Provo has And I applaud the plan. I think it's great. If you want to go higher density, that's fine too.
Mr. Holmes, you don't have the benefit of having been a part of a pretty robust discussion we had in a work session before,
Sorry, yeah.
where we talked about, just to Commissioner Ronan's point, what does it cost the city to serve the kind of development that we're contemplating, facilitating through this plan? And are there maybe more fiscally responsible ways to go about planning for development? Yeah, there's a component of that definitely, a big part of it, I think, in fact, is tied to public works and what it costs to provide services to homes on big lots with lots of frontage.
Dave Decker on that one.
Versus smaller, right? So that's part of the discussion. Also, likely part of the discussion would be, at what point, does residential development maybe allow for some additional things to happen in Provo, commerce that also brings some new revenue to the table? I think that almost fascinating kind of discussion. I think we'll continue probably to talk about it, and you'll probably get invited to weigh in on some different things.
Sure.
So, any other questions for staff? Okay, this is a public hearing. Do we have any neighborhood chairs that want to speak to this item with us tonight? Maybe while she's on her way up, let me acknowledge, I'm not going to read it, but we did receive some correspondence via Mr. Pepperoni from Matt Carter, just offering some thoughts relative to the plan. And just for the record, we have that, so.
Becky Bogdan, Lakewood Neighborhood Chair. We talked a lot about it the last time, so I won't talk so much about it. But that's not an elementary school that would need additional acreage. It's actually a middle school. So if the middle schools are bigger, so the middle school would need additional acreage. But with all that residential, you're going to need another elementary school as well. So if the middle school doesn't go there, you could have an elementary school there. And moving that to a different location would be very much appreciated for even little kids up to teenagers. And then we talked about the last time what a difficult area this portion is. And we would, if we're going to go ahead and open up the West Side planning policies and just kind of make it new and throw that out the window of no building below the highway, then we would like the opportunity to give us something that we need over there on the east side of the neighborhood, and give us the opportunity to have something that would help bring us up. That entire section of Fifth West is a really harder neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other neighborhood chairs that would like to speak tonight? Is there anybody that would like to speak to the proposal?
Hi, my name is Eric Chase. I'm the vice chair for the North Park neighborhood. It's not on the west side, but the west side development does definitely affect what happens in our neighborhood because there's currently almost no commercial or any other thing besides residential on the west side. The current plan is to widen 800 North going into town, and that is going to, the city's going to have to either buy or use eminent domain to purchase about 50, maybe more homes along that road. So when we're not planning for enough commercial to meet the service needs of people on the west side, every time someone on the west side has to go to the dentist, they have to drive across the freeway. Every time they have to go, pretty much anywhere, grocery store. So I appreciate the work that's gone into planning, and I hope we can find a way to have enough of the services people need so they don't have to drive all the way across town through other neighborhoods that are negatively affected. Thanks.
Thank you.
If I chew off my own tongue and choke myself, you'll know why in just a minute. Beth Alligood, Lakeview North Neighborhood Chair, was on this committee. I just came from the MAG's open house transportation plan up in Orem. Yeah, I think you know where I'm going on this. Their plan eventually is that Geneva gets widened to 5 lanes all the way through and down for a big corridor. So upping the density along Geneva Road, I'm kind of choking on this, I know, and you know why. I think that's a good idea, and I think extending it up to 6 South. I feel daggers behind me, I really do. If that's going to become a major transit corridor, then this plan actually would help the higher density along there to get that transfer. I'm really choking on this because my whole purpose of this was to maintain the character of the area, to maintain it so that we have that open field on the west side, and we can still maintain it with the transportation plans that are coming down. I think the commercial nodes are going to be fine. I think you're not including the airport industrial commercial in your thinking. At least I haven't heard anybody talk about that. I've only heard them talk about the commercial nodes in this. But you have all of that airport expansion out there also that isn't just industrial. It also is tagged as commercial. So you've got a ton of commercial out there that's going to service the entire area. I think if we are really smart with the transportation open house, they said, let's make sure we look at all modes of transportation. So having those main corridors with a higher density and have the walkability and the bikeability, which I know we're going to talk about when we're writing it out, and making sure that those green lines, which nobody ever seems to notice on that map, are maintained as parkway trails along these corridors is really important. Also, the Footprinters Park, I'm just going to speak to that. That's what Timp Quantis is going through right now up at Timp View High School. They have to exchange the land because that was a federal conservation land too. So it's possible. We've got the 100-acre park coming out there. We've got other park plans out there. So it's possible to do that land swap to be able to have the middle school come out and still maintain the conservation that we need out there. Bill, I'm sorry, I'm still against the commercial on the south side of the parkway, which I know the committee voted for, just because of the potential lawsuits that could come from it if that starts getting expanded west. And yes, we can make sure that doesn't expand west in the in the writing, in the, what's it called, the design book? The text that goes along with it.
And the map itself, right? I mean, it suggests this is it. I mean, I would view it that way, that commercial development should not expand further to the west.
Okay, so that is something that we can definitely say, here's a line we're not gonna.
That's what I see on the map, at least. And we could all speculate about what the future might bring, but.
It's always a speculation. My other concern always about this has been the floodplain and how to develop. I think this is a nice compromise map that kind of puts a lot of elements in it. But again, if you have developers that have to bring 8 to 10 feet of fill out there to develop these lands, it's gonna get dicey to see what actually happens in the future. But, we have 5 years before the sewer system comes in to look through it too. So thank you for your time.
Wait a minute, Beth, just to point out to the Planning Commission, so this is 6 South here.
Yes.
So you were saying commercial along that?
Not commercial, but
No, I'm sorry.
the LDR.
LDR, that's what I meant, I'm sorry.
And if you guys don't want to, I'm good with that too. I'm just saying that the MAG's plan for Geneva is to expand it to almost 5 lanes all the way down to the Parkway to create a transit corridor parallel to I-15. And so if you're looking at transit corridors, just like the apartment complex you just approved along the ITOD zone, the transit corridor is a place that you do want to put density.
So it's coming all the way down to here.
Yeah.
5 lanes all the way.
Yeah. That's what the future plan for Geneva was, since that was my specific question to them, because I said Geneva Road is a mess. It has no safety standards on it north of this because of the high school. There's no bike lanes. There's nothing like that. What's the future plan in Geneva? And they said, well, we really look at Orem, what Orem's done, and we want to extend that all the way down.
So is that information about the 5 lane, it sounds to me like it could potentially be significant enough that this.
Well, it's in the 40-year plan, so.
That this would need, I guess maybe I should just ask an informal question. Do you think that information is significant enough that it requires further conversation among the neighborhood about this stretch? Or
at this point in time, probably not, but just something to keep in mind for the future, because like I said, as I'm looking at this and looking down the road. This map's not even going to happen, not even going to be possible to even start for the next 5 years until we have more sewer connections. Development has stopped until we have the capacity to actually develop. So when this map comes around, it's a constant, it's like the general plan. It's a constant moving thing. So I think this is a good start and blueprint to it. But as those elements like the transportation plan and other things come into play, yeah, that corridor is probably going to have to be relooked at. Because if they're going to extend it 5 lanes, they're going to be taking out houses to do that.
Okay. Bill, procedurally, does that make sense to you? Or, do you feel like this information is information that stops and kind of returns the process any further, or do we just proceed kind of with this?
I think you should proceed.
Okay.
I can leave, right?
I think that's 5 minutes. Yeah, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak tonight? Whoever's first.
Hi, my name is Tragan Johnson, and I'm just a Provo resident, and forgive me, I've never done this before, but I live at 2529 West, so my backyard faces the airport. I can't see what it says underneath it, but it would face the airport new stuff. And I'm just curious, I would like to propose that they do the park first and then the airport stuff after, where residents, because we all live there for the peace and the views and all that pretty stuff. So that is all.
Could we clarify is the purple, you back up to the purple?
Yeah, okay, so I didn't see this here first. So I live like right here. So my backyard right now, I look at all the pastures and the
Okay.
farmland and everything.
Just for clarification, that isn't airport, but it's airport-related businesses, so it's really a business park
Okay.
situation.
So is there a reason why they want to do that little purple part right there instead of just have it be over here? So the park can be next to all the residential and the airport can be next to this fairly busy road.
I think that goes back to the desires of the property owner. Well, let's see, the city's buying this from the church, but it's being complicated in that the church is selling the city this if BYU can get land here. In order to get this land away from Mr. Hinckley, he needs this land to replace it.
Okay.
And this hatch marking that you see, that means it's in the airport protection where you really can't have housing. You can have businesses, but you can't have housing.
Okay.
The park itself will go in before these things develop.
Okay.
The park is going to be developed in the next few years.
When is a general plan for all those other items, all those other things?
Just as the property owners are willing to sell and businesses see enough opportunity for them to locate out there.
Okay.
And Ms. Oligood was right. This zone would allow for retail type uses. A hotel and those kinds of things could go in that zone.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Evan Johnson. I'm a property owner at 1100 West in the Lakeview Parkway corridor. We've been working with staff on our concept plan, and it's had a small commercial note in it. And on the previous developer, he had it in there for about 2 years prior to us working on the project. And we understand that commercial can be help the city on this residential deficit issue. But for me personally, commercial is not really about that. It's about a lifestyle. Where I live, I can walk to my grocery store, I can walk to the elementary school, I can walk to the bank, I can walk to the post office, and it's the convenience, those are the convenience to me that are more important than a big lot, having a granite floor, which I do have, and granite countertops and all that stuff is nice, but it's the day-to-day livability of your community that you're looking for. And the mixed-use nodes allow for that flexibility to be built into there. When I can walk down and get a haircut. I can do whatever. I don't like driving around. I've lived in California, I don't like being in a car. It is not living to be in a car. Driving in a car is not life. And we understand this plan may not even come into fruition for 5 years due to the sewer issue, but as it's drafted now, it is an improvement over the prior draftings. And as a landowner, we support the mixed-use flexibility that the planning department's put in there.
So you're a landowner, you don't reside in the planning area here?
That's correct. I was born in Provo. I went to Timpanogos Elementary School. They have commercial right across the street. I was a school teacher. I taught at Orem Junior High. They have commercial across the street. The park, being close to the elementary school issue is not really an issue. It's 2/3 of a mile away from the node. And as a teacher, I didn't see that commercial across the street from our school being an issue at all. And as a student at Timpanogos Elementary School, I never was impacted by the commercial across the street, across from Pioneer Park.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans lives in American Fork, but he owns and/or controls about 60 acres right down in that area.
Dixon Holmes, Provo City Economic Development. I'd just like to commend the Planning Commission and the committee that's worked on this plan for the many years that they have. And I think it's a great plan. It's not perfect, but I don't think there is a perfect plan. It will continue to get changed over time as political will and neighbors and property owners come in, and so it's just part of the process. But as the plan stands right now, I think from our perspective, it's very acceptable. If it were to be higher density on smaller footprints, that'd be awesome too. I mean, it could go a lot of different ways. It's not illegal or immoral. It's just an opportunity cost. That's how I look at it. So whatever you do to approve it, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Kelly Watson, and I represent Bach Homes. We're under contract for the parcel here. Previously, there had been more low-density residential as well as medium-density residential, and it's being significantly reduced. And speaking with city council members as well as neighborhood chairs, it seemed that everyone would be more on board with what we'd like to do there, which is mixed use. There would be some commercial, multifamily, townhomes, and thank you. Apartments as well as single family. And in speaking with the neighborhood chairs and people around in the neighborhood, we would be doing a tapering with single family to townhomes to the apartments. We'd be doing walkability splash pads. And what we would like to bring to that area is a grocer, and that's what everyone with city council and the West Side Plan indicated that they thought would be worthwhile for that particular area. We are in talks with a grocer right now that would like to put 10 to 12 acres there. And so at this point, I understand that there's an opportunity cost for not having commercial to the city, but to put it as commercial when there's no viable option for it yet, I think is a little bit, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't like the idea. You know, we want to come in, we want to do something. We're trying to work with the neighborhood. We're trying to work with everyone there and come up with something that meets everybody's needs, that makes, more of a walkable, missing middle sort of housing option there, but we can't go under contract with it as it currently is with the commercial, knowing what we know now. So we have something, we want to build something positive for the community, and we would like reconsideration to the designation of commercial for that particular area.
What are you requesting exact? So you want MDR instead of LDR? Is that what would make it viable, or?
We're viable with the LDR, or we're viable with the LDR as it is, but we would like some medium density residential for the apartments and then reduction to the commercial. They increased the commercial by, I believe, 4 acres since the prior plan. And so what we would like to do is have the commercial pared down a little bit. We were thinking grocery store, and then there's been some discussion as to what other amenities would be useful there, such as gas station, restaurants, dining, that sort of a thing. But we haven't really locked down any other decisions as far as what we think would work there, like Walgreens, that sort of a thing. But we do have a grocer that's interested in 10 to 12 acres there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, the public hearing's closed. The planning commission will be making a recommendation on this tonight, at least potentially. Commissioners, any discussion, questions of staff? Thoughts, comments? If not, I've got a few. The sewer, that keeps coming up. If somebody can just refresh my memory, what kind of time frame potential are we looking at in terms of being able to, even if it's just a broad 1 year, 2 years?
I'm David Day with Provo City Public Works. We have studied the sewer capacities, and we're getting ready to make available to everyone a map that details out where the sewer capacity is available and where it's not. And that should be coming out within the next couple weeks. On top of that are bigger issues that put us out 5 years, like a sewer treatment plant or trunk lines as funding becomes available to build that infrastructure. So we do have pockets in this west side area that would have sewer capacity. But I don't have that map to give out just yet.
Within the next couple of weeks, just
Yeah.
today, without upgrades, we'll have an idea of whether or not there's any prospect for growth.
Correct.
Until there are
Yeah, it's a color-coded map similar to this map you're looking at. It just kind of highlights. It's kind of a, if I can remember the colors, it's red, yellow, green, and orange. So it kind of gives, like, green is okay, yellow, orange is kind of has issues, and then red is like there's just no sewer there.
Okay. So there is a possibility there could be some development.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Geneva Road, do you know, is that phase 1, phase 2? Farther out?
When Beth mentioned that, I'm gonna have to check into that because I've not heard that scenario on Geneva Road. We were planning on building 2050, which is the extension of Geneva Road, just the same width as 2050 is from Center Street South to 6 South. So it's just a standard Provo City collector road. If MAG had something different than that, I'm not aware of it, and I need to check on that.
It's pretty hot off the press. They're also talking about a crossing across Provo Bay.
Yeah,
with it.
and I don't
Makes
know
me
if
think
like-
it might be a vision kind of a thing that's.
If there's something that
pretty-
goes across the bay, it comes off of Lakeview
Right, that's
Parkway and comes across right about here in this area. But it would be part of Lakeview Parkway coming across right there. That's like a 2050 kind of visioning. One of those projects that's similar to the road that goes across Utah Lake to the west. It's kind of one of those, I don't know if it's ever going to happen kind of projects. So, but I'll check on that Geneva Road and see what they're talking about there.
And just from my perspective, I think the land use arrangement that we're talking about here, whether it's a 3-lane facility, 5, it's probably going to work just fine.
Our standard collector width could handle 5 lanes, which is, a center turn lane and then 2 lanes in each direction. We don't like to stripe them that way. We like to initially go with a 3-lane section with bike lanes and parking, with the future expansion if traffic dictates to go to those additional lanes. But like, for instance, Center Street east of the downtown area, years ago that was a 5-lane section, And we analyzed that and we said, why do we have 5 lanes? We don't need it. So we narrowed it up, took it back to 3 lanes. We have bike lanes on there and then a huge parking area. It's just, we didn't need that much width for traffic.
Yep.
And I think if we had the money, we could go in there and reclaim that property, but it just costs so much money to retrofit, so we just kind of leave it how it is.
I appreciate that. Thank you. But anybody else have anything that, ask Mr. Day? I really like the format that the map has here. I don't know if we all share kind of the same perspective, or Mr. Pepperoni, if you look at it this way, but I take just kind of the way that we're not following property lines, that, you know, these are really land use patterns that we're talking about, and we're not necessarily married to a set number of acres and units and that sort of thing. So there would be some give and take as we look at individual development proposals and that sort of a thing, which is kind of my lead into any concerns that people have about commercial development here, like maybe Bach Homes might have. One of the things that is a little bit challenging and gets frustrating, I know, for property owners, is that the last, at least oftentimes, land uses that become financially viable are non-residential land uses. So in order to have things like retail development, a lot of times properties need to sit vacant for some period of time, and communities need to be pretty strong-willed to maintain a particular kind of zoning or to hold to a land use plan until those other uses become financially viable, and that a lot of times I know really frustrates people. They see neighboring properties developing and different things like that, and it's just simply a matter of a city with a color on a map that keeps them from being able to enjoy some immediate return on property value as well. But at the same time, if we don't preserve land for development that's going to be viable at some point in the future, the opportunity goes away and might go away really quickly. So I really appreciate this particular part of the plan and others that suggest the city is willing to tackle that challenging issue of preserving land for future needs and future opportunities. I will say at the same time that just as a planning commissioner, if somebody brought in a project with a 10-acre site and a grocer there, and some of the things you'd probably expect to see with a grocer, I think the plan probably affords some latitude to consider that and look at it and maybe talk about how, you know, ancillary uses around that might fit in with the concept of the plan. So that for me would be a huge carrot to dangle out in front of the city relative to talking about exactly what happens there. But I really appreciate the relationships that the plan suggests would happen if adopted and put into play.
Plan seems very balanced to me, given all the competing interests involved. And there's been a lot of work and discussions over this. It didn't happen overnight. A lot of input from the community and from questions from the commissioners. I think it's pretty good.
Mr. Rowe?
I know I've already said this to some degree in our pre-meeting, but I'll just repeat it here. I mean, I certainly want to acknowledge the work that's gone into this, and I like a lot of the same things that you've already talked about, the relationships, and that there is some nice patterns there. And I know we don't have a tradition in the city necessarily of really thinking about the costs of what it costs a city to do developments like to develop residential properties. I would feel much better if we had a little bit of a stronger handle or stronger sense of what that looks like. You know, what is it going to cost all of the residents of Provo for this west side to develop in a way that it's projected according to the map to develop, in which there still is a lot of not much density. I think that's asking all of the city to pay for that that privilege or that, aesthetic preference is a big ask. And I certainly understand that other neighborhoods that have been built in the past enjoy that privilege. And I would just say, well, if I were going back in time, I think we would have hoped that the people back then would have considered the future costs to the city a little bit more carefully than they have. And to just say that, well, we just needed to maintain the same types of low density residential patterns of development that we've always done because that's what we've always done. It just feels a little bit fiscally irresponsible to future generations. I understand that there's some room, and appreciate that some of the low density residential has been expanded. Where's the thing? If I'm hearing and remembering right, that this is the part that was expanded a little bit since we last saw it. Is that right, Bill? And I know I talked about this last time that the plan came before us. I just wish that we saw a little bit more medium density residential here. This is nice here, but again, to bear up some of those costs to the city now and in the future, I wish that there were more future taxpayers living in this part of the city. We just discussed Chapter 3 of the general plan, which we're currently trying to revisit and revise. Some of the language in there is that Provo City will encourage the development of various types of housing inventory to increase the health of existing neighborhoods while providing sufficient accommodations for people who want to work and live in Provo. And I think that this plan does contain, a mix up to a certain point, but it doesn't contain, for me, a wide enough mix. I wish there was more medium density, high density. Perhaps that will happen here, along Geneva Road if it does get expanded. That feels more ethical to me, especially the future residents of Provo City. So that's where how I feel. Again, understanding that those kinds of conversations and don't necessarily always happen when we're talking about developments, though I would like to see them happen more often.
So, Mr. Rowan, is it an accurate restatement of what you're saying to say density's not the problem, density's the solution? The problem is design. Is that in keeping with what you're thinking?
Say that again.
Density isn't the problem. Everyone wants to say density is the problem. Density, according to what you're saying, isn't the problem. Density is the solution. The problem is the design. The problem is how the urban form, how it's designed.
Right.
Right.
To restate your restatement. In other words, the opposition to density is more about, has been in the past, more about design choices than it has been about the density per se. And that if we were to design density better, then density might not feel as threatening or as problematic to people as it might right now. Yeah, and at the same time, then density solves a number of problems. It solves primarily, what I'm talking about here. It solves the problem of maintaining infrastructure into the future. It's one thing to build out an area in the city like this, and another thing to say, okay, what's it going to cost in 50 years to maintain that structure that we want right now so badly because it satisfies some aesthetic preferences, it satisfies even some really meaningful sense of place, right? That what we've heard a lot, which is really valid, is that the West Side is different, and it has, we don't want to make it like everywhere else in Provo. And I'm saying that desire comes with a cost that other people will pay for people on the West Side. Is that an ethical ask to make? Without conceding in any way that in order to make that ask, it's ethical to have more density. If we want, more space here, it's the ethical thing to do to the future citizens of Provo to maybe allow LDR to be MDR and HDR. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And for that reasons, I still have concerns about this plan that I think will prevent me from approving the plan, understanding that hasn't, those concerns haven't necessarily been present in the conversation that's been a very long one. I recognize how unfair that may seem to bring this at this late hour, but nevertheless, that's what feels like the right thing to do for the entire city, for the entire future city of Provo.
So my observation has been that it's very difficult for the public, much of the public, to articulate what they like or don't like in terms of design. But it's easy for people to say, I like 3 units to the acre, I don't like 6 units to the acre. And that's why there's always this perpetual focus on density rather than design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll stop. Okay. We can restart again if we need to. So thank you, Commissioner Ellsworth.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone who's worked on this. I know it's been a lot of effort and a long effort, so we appreciate your work. And then what I also like is that you're preserving Dry Creek and the Provo River and these trails and connectivity that you've created. I think that's phenomenal. I've used all of the trails on the west side. I think almost all of them. And then, yeah, we just appreciate your participation. I'm always caught between this balance of private property rights and holistic, comprehensive, cohesive community vision. And it's always a balance in any decision that we make. And especially in the detail that we've gotten to in this plan, I worry about the pendulum swinging too far in one direction, and that Farmer Knudsen, for example, could get $1 million for his property because we've colored it green, and then Farmer Ellsworth could get $3 million for her property because it's colored something else. And I do worry about the implications for such a micro plan. That scares me. And then, as Commissioner Rowan stated, I do worry that in the future, all of Provo City, not just the west side, all of Provo City should expect higher property taxes and significantly higher rates, utility rates, in order to fund the infrastructure, specifically on the west side and all over the city. So I do have some concerns, but I don't have any suggestions.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, comments from the commission? Density?
The Planning Commission should probably make that recommendation.
As proposed, I understand that it's 4 units to the acre gross.
No, these calculations are on a net basis.
Okay, maybe I'm just stating my perspective wrong. So this would be, thank you, I meant net, yes. So in reality, you're not anticipating 4 units per acre times the acreage that's included in the plan. It's 4 units per acre times the area included in the plan minus certain things. So it's some number less than 4 units to the acre. It's like roads, exactly, and those types of things.
So we've balanced it so it's still very close to 4 over the entire west side. But specifically, I think you should say whether or not you would prefer that these areas, this color, residential RES, whether that is defined as 4 units net or gross. This plan anticipates net because that was the recommendation of the committee.
And the real effect of that being, if it's gross, you're talking about probably 8,000 square foot lots. And if it's net, you're probably talking about 10,000 square foot lots.
It's going to be a difference between 4 units to the acre and 3 units to the acre.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Now, relative to the West Side Planning Committee, their recommendation is net or gross? Net. It's net. Okay, that's what I'd understood.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So if we approve this as it is right now, let's say that in 20 years, somebody came in with an idea for a project, for an MDR project, that had a design that just blew everybody out of the water, that was just so outstanding. It could be approved, correct? It could be, the plan could be modified for that project.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
These plans are always fluid. They can be amended in the future.
okay. So it would really be up to a developer to, you know, see what Provo's not only needs but wants are, and say, you know, step up to the plate and come up with a plan that Provo would approve of and the neighbors would approve of, and,
Right.
okay.
Any other comments, thoughts, concerns? Yeah, I really appreciate a couple of things that were mentioned, and the idea that this is gonna evolve over time. I think that is worth recognizing, and not to suggest that under the, you know, the fundamentals necessarily are gonna be undermined or anything like that. And I really appreciate where Commissioner Ronan's coming from. I think there is a level of analysis that every community could do that would be very helpful and effective in terms of evaluating land use proposals from the perspective that he's speaking of, and maybe just to offer a thought relative to looking at Provo City as a whole in this area, and this is maybe why I am comfortable with lower densities here than what in other contexts might make sense. I do think this is one of the few parts of Provo where we will see potentially low-density residential development happen moving forward, whereas, you know, we'll see vast areas of the community develop and redevelop with a very different kind of development, much more dense and compact and that sort of a thing. So feeling like there is a place in a community still for, you know, contemporary low-density residential development, I think this might be the place. But for me too, that's really part of the general plan discussion, just looking at what might make sense moving forward in terms of that makeup of how much low-density residential really does make sense to allow, maybe if any, and that sort of a thing. But maybe not being as familiar with the whole city as some other people. Again, it seems to me like this is just one of those last areas that exist. So that being said, if there's no other discussion, somebody would like to make a motion, that'd be great.
I'll make a motion. Based on the effort that went forth to work this plan out, and the decision between net and gross in our housing development, as we're accepting this plan based on the net value of land, I move that we accept this plan, or recommend that we accept this plan and use it as a guideline for the future.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. And just to be clear, your motion involves having the density and the low density areas be calculated on a net basis, not the gross.
On a net.
Okay, that's what I understood. Okay, do we have any?
And just to clarify also, I mean, on this item, we're forwarding a positive recommendation to the municipal council.
Thank you, yes.
That's what the motion is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on the motion?
I'd like to discuss this. Why wouldn't we do gross? I mean, yeah, why wouldn't we?
Just speaking for myself, having been in a couple at least of the committee meetings, the strong sentiment from the residents that participated in the committee, on the committee and the discussions and the feelings that they've expressed. I don't know if staff has anything they want to add.
Yeah, what we have found in several projects that have gone forward on the west side and been proposed, when developers have asked for gross density, 4 units to the acre gross density, that ends up yielding a lot of 6,000 to 8,000 square foot lots, predominantly 6,000 square foot lots, because about 30% of the land is lost in roads. Every time they take that plan out into the neighborhoods do not react well to such small lots, especially on the west side. So the difference between that net and gross means we're not getting 6,000 square foot lots, we're getting 8s and 10s as a minimum. We were really kind of setting developers up for a public beating, because we were sending them out to neighborhood meetings where if they did what the general plan said they had the right to ask for, they were just getting beat up.
Any other discussion? Okay, if not, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so that was 2 opposed. Remainder in favor. Get that right? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, that is. And it's the result of a lot of work. So it's been expressed before, but that certainly is appreciated. Next step for that, City Council. Okay, moving on. Again, we have several items tonight that were on the agenda that are being continued. One was withdrawn, so item number 7. I understand, Mr. Pepperoni, you'll be presenting on this?
Thank you. This is a rezone request that actually initiated with the city council, or the suggestion for it initiated with city council when negotiations went on to sell some property of the golf course for a medical school. So the property we're talking about is in the East Bay area. 1860 South being here, obviously the I-15 there. There's the Novell campus. What we're doing is we're taking property out of the SC3 zone and zoning it public facilities, and out of the PIC zone and zoning it public facilities, because that really is public golf course. All of that is public golf course. We're just trying to make the zoning more consistent with the actual uses. That's the current zoning map. Those are the areas that would come out into the PF zone and go into the PF zone. That's what we would end up with. Okay. Any questions?
Can you go to the map again, showing what that's existing? Okay.
Right, that's existing.
Areas in red simply would be public facilities.
Going to public facilities. Now, I would point out one thing, that if you follow the staff recommendation, there should also be with the recommendation a condition that policies 6 and 9 of the general plan for the East Bay neighborhood be taken out of the general plan, because to make these changes is actually in conflict with those statements, policies 6 and 9. And that's on page 3 of your staff report, just below what shows as paragraphs 6 and 9. It's a paragraph that starts East Bay Neighborhood General Plan Policy 6 and 9 on page 3. Explains what I'm talking about, but we should take those 2 policies out of the general plan if we're going to proceed with this.
The part of the golf course that would remain SC3,
That's what's being sold,
that's being sold to,
the medical school group.
got it, but that hasn't happened yet. That's still in the works, or?
It's under contract. Has it closed?
Okay.
So the documents, so they're going to be coming forward with a plan that's a mixture of housing and medical school, and we're right now working through with them what zones would be appropriate for their project to go forward. We may end up with 2 different zones, the hospital, a healthcare zone here, the same as where IHC is located, and some type of multifamily zone there. That's what I'm anticipating. You'll see that project coming up pretty soon, I would imagine.
What is the history of that SC3 zone? I mean, pre-golf course, was there something there or something that was planned to be there, or why is that there?
I think it was just hoping to be regional commercial, but I don't know the background.
So in 2006 and 7, all of this was PF. And at the time, we were working with the Boyer Company, and we were working with Target and a couple other retailers, and everything that was zoned from PF to SC3 was going to be a part of a lifestyle center at this location. And so at the time, the Planning Commission and the council rezoned that to SC3. And now that these holes right here will be shifted, and it's holes 10, 11, and 12 will be shifted to what used to be known as the Cooney property. Well, Cooney's was right here. Provo City had owned this, but now that the city owns all of this, those 3 holes, not necessarily as 10, 11, and 12, but 3 new holes, including this little island hole, will be, this will be the new portion of the golf course. And so because this will remain as a golf course, it needs to be zoned back to PF to let other people know that it's not SC3. The city has no intent of making it SC3 or commercial development, but maintain it as a golf course. And while we're cleaning it up, this portion right here that's PIC, which is an extension of all of this, will also be rezoned. And Bill, could you go to that last image? 'Cause I think there's something there that's off. This must be, I don't know what this is. Okay, general plan, but the zoning will be public facility, and this will also be public facility. So at some point, we probably need to do a general plan cleanup, or I don't know if this will do that or not, but at some point, those should also be cleaned up just to be consistent with what is golf course, which is all this area here. And this was a request from the council and also the people that were wanting to develop the golf course agreed. They had wanted more, but in the negotiations, it's no, let's peel this back from SC3. But to answer the commissioner's question, there was a commercial development there at one time of about 50 to 70 acres, depending on how much ground you committed.
And that didn't happen in the end because recession and stuff like that, or I'm just asking out of curiosity at this point.
No, certainly. Partly because of the recession, but even Target as late as 2010 was still interested. And to the extent that the city was going to buy the Nature Sunshine piece, which we owned probably 20 years ago, buy it from Nature Sunshine, give it to Target, have them do their store in a much smaller footprint. We missed a construction schedule, and Target spent all their money in Canada, and most of you are aware how that went. Then they had a bathroom scandal and a lot of other things. Target did not happen right here. And
Got it.
The way the zoning is going, it would not, because the commercial portion that remains SC3 will be consumed by the medical school with the medical housing. And so there really won't be any more commercial opportunity short of a zone change and the council agreeing to it. And as of right now, that's not even on the table.
Thanks.
So they began building 3 holes, 3 more golf holes over there. So those are the 3 that they're going to move to.
People's edification, before they can do anything on this portion of the golf course, they have to rebuild 3 new holes here, and that design is underway right now. With the golf course.
Started it years ago, right?
Well, just recently they've started again to do the 3 new holes. They'll probably do the residential first, but they won't be able to impact what is currently holes 10, 11, and 12 until this is playable.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else from staff? Any questions of staff? Anything at all? This is a public hearing. Anybody here that would like to speak to this tonight?
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Hawks. I work for CBRE, and this actually is becoming the Timpanogos Tech Center, not the old Novell campus. So we're trying to rebrand this property. To our surprise, we were unaware of the notice today for the zoning rechange. We just found out from a letter last night. And speaking to many of our client being one of the majority landowners in the East Bay Association, a lot of these owners didn't know about the rezoning happening tonight either. So we are very excited about the changes that are happening in South Provo area. Hopefully that it'll bring kind of a revitalization to Southern Provo. We obviously have a lot of tenants. We have a lot of moving pieces that we're trying to accomplish on our property for our clients and our tenants. One of the concerns we have is we immediately tried to find information on the rezoning, and we couldn't find really anything available. We even came down to the offices, and short of the information that I collected tonight, we couldn't find really any information. We were hoping that maybe there was a traffic study done. We're a little concerned about the impact of the intersection here and traffic flow through this area, simply because we have worked on projects up in Lehigh and watching that explosion and traffic issues there, and it just becoming more issues for our tenants in the community. I'm sorry, can I interrupt for just a second? Sure.
Just to make sure I understand exactly what's being proposed tonight. The SC3 zoning is in place, correct? So that's not changing. The only change that's being contemplated is to change the golf course to a zone that the rest of the golf course is in. So from my view, we're not considering something tonight that potentially could generate more development than what the zoning already allows.
I would just like to know if there's more information done, an impact study, traffic study.
There's a lot more information. There's a lot of information on the medical school, but come see me tomorrow. Leave me your phone number.
Okay.
We can get you all kinds of information on that.
I'd really appreciate that. And we're all pro-business. We're really excited about the changes. And so, yeah, forgive me if we oversaw looking for it, but we were scrambling looking for it and hoping that we weren't behind the ball on something. So appreciate your time. Thank you.
Before, you said Timpanogos Business Park.
Timpanogos Tech Center.
Timpanogos Tech Center.
That's our plan. We'd like to rebrand. We'd also, it's proposed, we'd like to change the street sign from Novell to Timpanogos Tech Center. We haven't gotten there in all of our doings, but my clients own it for about a year now, and we're really excited to make it a multi-tenant park and kind of invite more of the community to enjoy the amenities that was kind of just a corporate campus.
Apologize to my colleagues, but I'm going to stay on the tangent for a second here. Pretty full now. The space. Do you have much vacancy, or?
We're about 82% occupied. So we're really pushing for leasing. Everybody, surprisingly, I'm new to the area myself. Everybody refers to it as the old Novell campus, so we're trying to create some new energy for Southern Provo and for our tech center. And we have amenities at this property and infrastructure that a lot of people can't get in Silicon Slopes. And we're trying to kind of draw more energy from Silicon Slopes into Southern Provo.
It'd be nice to see a trend reversed, right? We've seen things exit to the north. It'd be wonderful to see them have more of a propensity to stay or to maybe move this way.
That's definitely our vision too.
That's exciting. That's really neat, I think.
Yeah, and we appreciate the UTA, UDOT, UVX Transit incorporating our campus and the mall into the master plan. So that was wonderful too. Thank you.
When would we expect to see? Would it be a project plan for the medical school, is that month to 6 months zone change?
Yeah,
Any guess on when?
I think you'll see that in the next, possibly by Christmas, if not right after the first of the year.
So it sounds like that's probably the thing to keep a close eye on, that we'd be looking at.
Yeah, and hopefully we can draw off that as well.
Yeah.
I think you will.
Okay, I apologize for interrupting.
Oh, no, thank you.
Thanks. Do you have anybody else from the public tonight like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing nobody, the public hearing's closed. Do you have any questions for staff? Any discussion among ourselves? Anything? This really looks to me like one of the really easy ones.
Yeah,
A
it's
golf course.
straightforward.
Okay, unless there's further discussion,
I'll make a motion. I move that we forward a positive recommendation for Provo Economic Development's request for a rezone of portions of the East Bay Golf Course, 1860 South, East Bay Boulevard, from the Regional Shopping Center, SC3, and Planned Industrial Commercial, PIC, to public facilities, and that's in the East Bay neighborhood. And I make note of the staff report. I think perhaps specifically calling attention to on page 3 of the staff report, the observation that the current general plan identifies the western portion of the subject property along I-15 as commercial. No. Sorry, just above that. The East Bay Neighborhood General Plan Policies 6 and 9 conflict with the proposed zone change by reducing the land area in the S33 zone contrary to Policy 6 and moving away from retail use without addressing the intent of Policy 6. And therefore, staff suggests the deletion of these policies as part of this zone change request.
Second.
thank you. Marathon motion, thank you very much.
Sorry.
For that, no, that was flawless. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It was unanimous. Thank you. Do we have anything else we need to discuss before we adjourn? Okay, we're adjourned then.
Move that we adjourn.
So moved, done.